The idea of Shahadah in Islam is not the idea of martyrdom. The Shaheed is the one who literally bears witness. The Shahadah means witnessing, testifying. And the Shaheed is one who dies demonstrating the ultimate sincerity of his life by laying down his life for that in which he believes. That is why he is a witness. There is no superior testimony to faith. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, do not consider them to be dead. This is the monotheistic summons and assurance. And it's being proclaimed in the world of pagan Arabia, where they really did believe in death. No particular belief in personal survival after death. So death was indeed the ultimate catastrophe, an unimaginable cessation of everything. The end of all feeling, all knowing, all memory, complete oblivion. Monotheism came, and at the hands of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, yanked the pagan Arabs out of the ignorance of belief in nothing at all, in belief in professed multiple deities, belief in an absence of any universal law, and took them to the exact opposite in a few short years. We begin the new Hijri year with a kind of bittersweet commemoration. The month of Muharram is one of the sacred months. The sacred months, Al-Ashura al-Huram, are Dhul Qa'dah, Dhul Hijjah, Muharram and Rajab. And these are months in which actions are magnified and in which the divine scrutiny becomes more absolute. So we know that fasting in the month of Muharram is a commendable practice. Man sama yawman min al-Muharram فَبِكُلِّ يَوْمٍ لَهُ ثَلَاثُونَ يَوْمًا in a hadith. Whoever fasts a day of Muharram, for each day he fasts, he will be given the reward of having fasted 30 days. The first 10 days of Muharram are a particularly important time to fast in the way of the Holy Prophet ﷺ. And the 10th of Muharram, a mysterious day, Ashura, is a day when it is a strongly affirmed sunnah that the Muslims should fast. He came to Medina ﷺ and he found the Jews fasting on this day. It's an ancient day. It's a monotheistic tradition to fast on this day of Ashura. And he said, why are they fasting this day? And they told him, هَذَا يَوْمٌ أَنْقَذَ اللَّهُ فِيهِ مُوسَى. This is the day on which Allah saved Musa alayhi salam. It's the date of the Exodus. قَالْ نَحْنُ أَوْلَى بِمُوسَى مِنْهُمْ. He said, we have even more right to Musa than they. وَلَئِنْ بَقِيتُ إِلَى قَابِلٍ لَأَصُومَنَّ التَّاسُعَةَ. And if I live to see another year, I shall fast on the 9th as well as the 10th of Muharram. And this becomes an important practice, a sunnah mu'akkada for the Muslims. And I believe a day which is at the beginning of our year, which is a day of new beginnings. The hijrah of the Bani Israel as they turned away from the idolatrous practices of the ancient Egyptians and moved towards the new horizon that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had offered them. But according to our historians, Ashura is also a day associated with other new beginnings. That seems to be what it means. According to many of our historians, such as Ibn Kathir, it was on the day of Ashura that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala relented towards Adam and forgave him. فَتَلَقَّى آدَمُ مِنْ رَبِّهِ كَلِمَاتٍ فَتَابَ عَلَيْهِ. Allah received words from his Lord and he relented towards him. It's also narrated that this was the end of the Tufan, the end of the flood of Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam. We're told that this is the day in which Sayyidina Sulaiman was crowned, the day in which Allah relented towards Sayyidina Dawood, the day in which Sayyidina Isa was born. Some of these are unverifiable ancient memories, but they're there in our historians. The point is, Ashura is about new beginnings. The new year is about a new beginning, but in a spiritual sense. Each of those events is opening up not some new political chapter, but some new spiritual chapter, turning away from the many and turning to the one, turning away from sin and turning towards obedience, turning away from the shadows and turning towards the light. This is what it means. Now, historically, the Muslims have always commemorated Ashura in many ways. And in the Ottoman Empire, for instance, it was an important day, and it still is in the Balkans and in Turkey, some parts of the old Ottoman provinces in the Arab world. Ashura is important. It was traditional to wear new clothes. It was traditional to go to the mosque, to visit the masajid on the day of Ashura. It was traditional also in the palace of the Khalifa to cook puddings that would be distributed to the poor. And sometimes, but the day of Ashura also, and this is something that really does bear reflection and contemplation, is of course something that is a recollection of probably the most tragic event in the history of the Ummah after the death of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, which is the maqtal, the death, the mashhad, the martyrdom of Sayyid al-Shahadah, Imam Hussain, radiallahu anhu. And here we need to pause. Why is it this point in the calendar that takes place? The 10th of Muharram, the year 61 of the Hijrah, this unimaginable catastrophe, the slaying at allegedly believing hands of the grandson of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, the one who had climbed onto the back of the Holy Prophet ﷺ when his grandfather was praying, the one who was so beloved to him, cut down on the field of Karbala. Why is this associated with the day of Ashura? The events are well known. After Sayyidina Ali, karramallahu wajhah, had experienced Shahadah himself, the rule seemed to pass to Imam al-Hasan, who then abdicated after a public consultation, Ashura, in favour of Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, on the understanding that Muawiyah and the new Bani Umayyah would not touch a hair of the head of the Ahlul Bayt of the Prophet ﷺ. And Imam al-Hasan was reconciled to this, and Muawiyah, who is the son and heir in this new dynastic idea that is emerging, his son Yazid doesn't really seem big enough for the job. He's into bear baiting. He has pet monkeys with gold caps jumping around his palace. He's more interested in the vices of the palace than in the affairs of the Muslims. And this seems to be in a religion where the Amir, where the commander has to be an example to everybody of honour, of piety, of restraint, of public service, to be a catastrophe. Overwhelmingly, the Muslims, knowing the principle has to be the unity of the believers, make bay'ah and acknowledge the legitimacy of the succession of Yazid. But some hesitate. And one of those who hesitate was Imam Hussain, who is in Medina. Then he goes to Mecca, and then he's invited to Kufa by the people of Kufa, who are one of the few cities who believe that perhaps this new ruler should not be accepted, or that there should be some kind of, not battle, but strike, a conscientious objection, a boycotting of this new dynastic royal principle. But he goes out from the city of Kufa when he hears that Yazid's men are coming, and he asks those who had invited him, of the people of Kufa, to support him, and they decline. And they say, our hearts are with you, but our swords are against you. They're afraid of the Khalifa's reprisal. So he's there with only 72 of his followers and his womenfolk and his children on the dusty plain of Karbala. And you know the rest of the story, how the battle lasts for a day, and nobody is killed, and nobody is killed, and nobody is killed, because nobody dares to touch a hair on their heads, until finally a former Kharijite from Najd does the deed and cuts down the grandson of the Holy Prophet ﷺ and sends his head to Damascus. What Ashura is asking us to ponder is what we do about that. What should be the monotheistic cast of mind when we consider an apparently terminal disaster such as that? There are different responses. Of course, grief. Of course, sorrow. Of course, rejection. And last year, on the day of Ashura, the Turkish Prime Minister, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, went to a mosque in Istanbul and gave a speech. This is starting to happen now in Turkey, that religion and politics are starting to regain their natural symbiosis. First Ashura speech that a Turkish head of state had given since the decline of the Khulafa. He gives a speech and he says, Karbala is a sign of unity. Because he's ruling Turkey, which is a diverse society. They have Sunnis, they have Shia, they have Kurds, they have all kinds of minorities. He says everybody agrees on the principle of Karbala, that is to say, Nobody supports the killing of the grandson of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, and nobody takes the side of his killers. We are all united. Karbala as the symbol of Muslim unity. One of the things on which we are most emphatically united. It was a very beautiful speech, and you can see it on the internet in English translation. One of the most beautiful things you can ever see is to go on the day of Ashura to a mosque in a district of Istanbul called Khoja Mustafa Pasha. And the mosque is the Sunbul Sinan Jami. It's a Hanafi mosque. Between Zuhr and Asr, they have a special majlis, a special commemoration, which is hugely popular. Thousands and thousands of people block the streets, and they have loudspeakers, and everybody wishes to hear. And what do? It's all about Maqtali Imam Hussain. It's about the death, the martyrdom of Imam Hussain. Of course, a somber occasion. What they do is they recite marsiyas, and a marsiya is a lament, a traditional Turkish poem lamenting in sorrowful but restrained tones the demise of the grandson of the Prophet ﷺ. And there are ilahis, religious songs. And then there's a khatam. The Quran is read through, and the reward for that khatam, according to their belief, is given to the Shahadah of Karbala. And then the Asr Azan is given, and that's the end of the Karbala commemoration, the marasim of Karbala. Ashura is about monotheism turning the page, moving away from primitive emotion and pessimism about life after death to something that could not be more optimistic, which is to say, بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ يُرْزَقُونَ. They are alive in the presence of their Lord, receiving sustenance.